They have what's this? Kings, senior chiefs,
Yes.
and chiefs, just ordinary chiefs and headmen. But I don't know how they categorize them.
Yeah. But just explain that in the act, there are three categories. It's kings, chiefs, and headmen. But in this, they have specifically distinguished between kings. I say in the act, the Traditional Leadership and Governance Framework Act, there are three categories of traditional families. You have your king, chief, and a headman. But I don't know why they split the category of those first two. When they don't like the term paramount chief, so they like the king or sultan or chief, you go see, because in fact in the Eastern Cape they use the other terms.
Wonderful. Nobody in the Western Cape.
No, not Western Cape, not Northern Cape, not Northwest. But things might change with a new act, which brings in the question.
So the senior traditional leaders would be the chiefs.
Yes. And then the headman.
Those were elected by government.
Appointed, not elected, appointed. They are not given hereditary. They're staying like this.
They were all recognized.
Yeah? The confirmation. Tribal authorities across traditional classes.
Evening. Yeah. Today I'm going to talk about land and land use in the former reserves. I'm looking at the contribution of the land reform program to livelihoods of poor people in the former reserves. This lecture focuses on one of the land questions in contemporary debates, which is the contribution of land to the livelihoods of poor people. There has been a pervasive view that casts doubts on the relevance of land reform in South Africa. Its advocates argue that rural South Africans are urbanizing and thus not or in need of jobs but not in need of land. Moreover, a national study of land reform projects in 2007, which found failure of more than 50% of land reform projects, has also influenced the perceptions mostly of some ANC leaders about the land reform program. 2007. On the other hand, there are scholars who, while not doubting the relevance of land reform, question the contribution of group-based land reform projects to the livelihoods of poor people. According to the scholars who push this view, South Africa has two forms of group-based land reform projects. That is, projects where both land ownership and production is done collectively on one hand. On the other hand, you have projects where, group-based projects where land is owned collectively but production is done at an individual basis. related to the group-based land reform projects, the scholars raised 2 points about these projects. That group-based land reform projects where production happens jointly are a failure. 2, where the groups operate on large farms that are not subdivided, the projects fail. Yet there is another view which is emerging that says that land makes a difference in the lives of poor people. Based on a case study of the Lindlala Communal Property Association, that is a group-based land reform project in the Emalahleni local municipality. I would show that group-based land reform projects can make a contribution in the livelihoods of people. But there are conditions that I highlight as important for this to happen. One, academic research and social facilitation are some of the factors that are important in ensuring that such projects do make a contribution in the livelihoods of people. In the context of the Lindlala, the project was established in 2001, and they took over the farm in 2002, and they have been in operation for 17 years now. And these debates should be viewed in relation to broader debates that were taking place, informed by debates in Europe, where there were discussions by Marxists about trying to understand how agrarian societies would become or would transform into capitalist societies. In South Africa, the earlier debates have been between liberal scholars on the one hand and radical scholars or Marxists, as well as social historians on the other. Liberal scholars believed that land had ceased to be important in the lives of Africans, but by the 1930s, due to, among other reasons, the collapse of agricultural activities in rural areas, as Africans were allegedly using primitive methods. Radical scholars linked the deterioration of subsistence economies and the conversion of the majority of land-based African people into wage workers to the development of capitalism and its penetration in African societies. To them, by the 1930s, land had lost its relevance in the lives of rural people. And a variant of this is a view that says that by the 1960s, rural people have become less interested in agricultural land. Using those debates, I look at the case study that I've just spoken about, the Lindlala Communal Property Association. And I argue that the de-agrarianization thesis, which argues that rural people, by the 1960s, rural people had lost interest in agricultural land. I show that this influences much of the debates in in the current period in South Africa. And as a result of that, some scholars have started questioning the relevance of land reform in the current period, because their argument is that rural people are not interested in agricultural land, but are interested in jobs and housing in urban areas. There is that view in the current debates. The other view, which attributes, it does not question the relevance, but it attributes the failure of land reform in improving the livelihoods of people, to the use of group farming as a method of land reform. But okay.
I just had a question. Before land reform processes, if one was to go back, let's say even before the 1930s, would the farming or the agricultural activity have been collective, or was it happening at an individual family level?
In the African communities.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, production was happening at a household level, and in most cases there was use of family labor by those households. Yeah. So the above experiences, I mean, the experiences that I've spoken about are experiences that are applicable to projects that are led by farmers and government officials who combine people with divergent backgrounds into projects in collaboration with estate agents who also act as consultants. The farmers recruit their workers and other people as beneficiaries where the farm workers cannot meet the price of the farm. In other words, they would bring people from different backgrounds together to form a group that would then apply for a farm and get a grant from the government. The vexed issue of support to land reform beneficiaries is also often cited as one of the factors that causes failure of the land reform projects. At issue is the manner the support is provided, which is often about imposition of business plans not crafted with the beneficiaries. The imposition is mostly by government officials or the consultants that are working with the applicants. Thus, the issue of support is problematic as it is often absent, and where it is provided, as I say, it is not in response to what the people need, but it's more what the consultants or the government officials want to see. Well, they are in terms of the Department of Agriculture. They are extension officers, but whether they are effective or not is a different issue, because in most cases they would. I mean, it's hard to get services to them. I mean, from them. Their response is mostly dismal in responding to the needs of the farmers. Who pays them? It's a government. They are government employees. Well, they would. Okay. Having said that, these are concerns that are being raised by some of the scholars about the failure of land reform projects, I point out that there are examples of successful projects in the country. In the Limpopo province, you have a number of projects that are considered successful, and the Delindlala, the one that I'm going to talk about, is also considered as one of those projects that are successful. As I said, Delindlala is a project that was initiated in 2001, and the group took over the farm in 2002, at the beginning of 2002. This is a project of 40 members who come from one village called Lupapasi, about 17 kilometers to where the next town is, Indwe. Although they started as 40 members, as we speak now, the number has dropped to 25 members. Now, a bit about this group. Some of them are descendants of the late 19th century progressive African farmers, as well as peasants that Colin Bundy talks about in his book, The Rise and Fall of the African Peasantry. Of South African peasantry, yes. There are also landless people originating from former farm workers or Amalos, some of whom were chased out of white farms and moved into the rural areas. And some of them went to Lupapas. But what is common in all of them is that all of them were linked in one way or the other to land-based livelihoods, either as workers of farmers, but they were linked to land-based livelihoods. Research by Nsebeza in 1999 identified the dire shortage of land for grazing in Xalanga. The findings and efforts to find solutions to the land shortage led to the introduction of the land reform program to the residents of Xalanga, who were associated with Xalusa, the NGO, the local NGO in Xala that I spoke about yesterday, Xala University Students Association. The research also identified the nature of the land need in the district. On the other hand, social facilitation by Xalusa assisted the group to plan before and after taking over the farm. During the planning phase, the group decided on a number of issues, and I identified them. One, not to relocate to the farm. Instead, teams of members would take turns to go to the farm to work on the farm. That is the 40 members. Secondly, each member was allowed to keep a maximum of 10 cattle, 50 sheep as a grazing management system, but also ensuring that there is space for everybody on the farm. They also agreed to work collectively on the farm. That is, they will produce as a group collectively and not produce or work as individuals on individual portions of the land. The last point is that they also decided that they were not going to subdivide the farm because they feared that subdivision would result in the farm becoming a village as different households would have to, to be given portions of land. Although the project has been in operation for 17 years, this has not been problem-free. Before 2002, between 2002 and mid-2003, Delindlala had problems with some members not committing their labor to activities of the project. There was lack of capital, and there were also cases of ill discipline among members. And men were mostly the culprits, as they tended to focus on their individual livestock and ignore the activities of the collective. And because of this, you could see that livestock, which was up to that point owned by individual members who brought in their livestock, was mainly the domain of men. And crop production, which was done collectively, beginning to be done collectively, was a focus of women. Women were concerned about food production and food security in their households. However, while the livestock of individuals improved, the owners suffered severe stock losses due to diseases and theft. That is during this period, 2002 to 2003. But sustained social facilitation by Xalusa helped the project to develop strategies of dealing with the problems and to pursue collective crop production. For instance, Xalusa contracted an independent local trainer of farmers to provide stock management training and support to the livestock owners on the farm. Through its networks, the NGO also organized funds for the purchase of livestock medication. It also exerted pressure on the veterinary services of the department to support the livestock owners. And eventually, the stock losses had become minimal by 2004. The period between from mid-2003 to 2005 saw growth in interest among members of the project towards collective production on the farm. The turning point was when women who dominated the leadership structure took over the control of the project in 2005. Such a development boosted the project's efforts to pursue collective crop production. It ensured greater involvement of children of beneficiaries in activities of the project. There were regular weekly meetings, planning meetings of the management committee that were led by this leadership. And there was also an existence of working teams in the project who would take responsibility of various aspects of the farming activities on the farm. Lastly, there was recognition of the labor of those that were putting effort on a daily basis in the activities of the project. Those members their labor was paid for. Moreover, the new leadership also injected energy into the group and orchestrated internal discussions, including the enforcement of an earlier resolution that each household should donate a sheep into the collective to build livestock of the collective. Remember, up to 2004, the livestock that was on the farm was livestock of individuals who brought their livestock on the farm. Now they were beginning to build livestock of the collective. By 2005, there were 20 sheep that came as donation from members into the pool of the collective. The implementation of land reform effected enormous social and economic changes on the lives of beneficiaries and their families. The greatest impact has been in changes in numbers of livestock of individuals. For instance, when they got into the farm in 2001 or 2002, they had 154 cattle. The number increased by 2006 to 345, and there was a slight drop in 2009 to 329, but there was an increase. Similarly, there was increase in the number of sheep that was on the farm. In 2001, there were 262 sheep. In 2006, there were 969 sheep on the farm. But by 2009, the numbers had dropped again up to 800 sheep. And the decline in the numbers was mainly because of stock sales, but also there were some losses that were related to diseases. There was also remarkable changes in livestock ownership at a household level. When they got into the farm in 2002, there were 32.5% of the members had no livestock. But by 2006, the number of livestock owners had increased, and it was only 17.5% of the members that did not have livestock by 2006. Delindlala also saw gradual increase in hectares under crop production during this period, from 2.7% in 2003 to 57.4% in 2008. And the land was used mostly for maize production and maize and vegetable production. In terms of produce, there was gradual increase in vegetable production, especially cabbages, during this period. For instance, in 2003, they started small, but in 2002, but by 2003, they had 10,000 heads of cabbages. In 2004, 20,000 heads. In 2010, they were producing 60,000 heads of cabbages. The produce was sold mainly to the chain stores around there, Quick Spar, Boxer, in the nearby towns of Elliot, Dordrecht, Indwe, Lady Frey, and Tala. Some of the produce was also sold to members of the public and also in social occasions in the nearby villages, such as funerals, circumcision occasions. Members of the project also shared some of the produce, especially those members who worked consistently on the farm. And this meant that the individuals that were working consistently on the farm were getting produce out of they were getting produce out of the farm, and this had a contribution in addressing poverty at the household level. And okay. This progress and the strides that the members of the project were making attracted recognition from the government, because up to 2005 there was very little support from the government. But as activities escalated and production showed improvement, government officials started showing interest in the project. And this was shown by the government publicly acknowledging the strides of the project. And some of the acknowledgement meant that they were, they were chosen in farmer competitions in the district, but also in the province, and they won some of those competitions from 2008 up to 2010. They were winning every year in these competitions. And the last one was in last year, late last year, when the chairperson of the project, who is a woman, was invited to Pretoria in an award giving ceremony by the department. The recognition went hand in hand with the government's intervention in the project through programs such as the recapitalization program, which includes the involvement of mentors. The recapitalization program focuses on infrastructure development and improvement of production systems of the selected projects. It also encourages the establishment of strategic partnerships between the projects and experienced commercial farmers. Indeed, a white commercial farming consultant was brought into the project as a mentor from 2008 onwards. And the introduction of a mentor saw a marked shift, introduced a marked shift in collective production practices on the farm. For instance, crop production was abandoned in favor of stock production, livestock production. And during this period, when of the involvement of mentors, the group decided that they would focus. Of course, this was influenced by advice of the mentor. They decided that they would focus on livestock that consisted of three categories: beef, dairy, and sheep. As I conclude, I want to point out that without proper identification of the beneficiaries through research, and without consistent support of the project through social facilitation, its success would not have been able to make the strides that it has made. Of course, there was later on involvement of the government, as I indicated, but I also show that the support had problems, because the mentor focused more on technical aspects of farming and less on social facilitation, on looking at social relations among the members of the project. As a result, from 2008, when the mentor came in, there have been development of tensions among members, around how decisions should be taken, what to do on the farm. But one point that I want to make is that the project has made positive social and economic impact on the lives of beneficiaries. There has been introduction of new social dynamics in the village where this group came from, in that the members continued to belong in the village. They did not relocate and leave the village. And as a result, a new group a social group of farmers has emerged in the village. The other point is that land has contributed to food security in households of the members in the village, but also to households that were able to purchase food or vegetables from the project. Then the last point is that the project has also led to emergence of women and recognition of women as leaders in their own right in the village. Thank you. Okay.
One question I want to ask is, are there other similar projects? How many are there in the country which are similar to this one, and how have they prospered?
I haven't done a study of other projects, but I know in terms of the research that I quoted of 2007, that it was said that the 50% of land reform projects are not faring well. So it means that there are the other percentage is of projects that are faring well. But as I say, in the Limpopo province, there are projects. One is a restitution project that was established in 2004 and was supported by a local NGO. The project is considered one of the success stories in the area. Okay. Okay.
Good afternoon. My apologies, I've missed the first part of the presentation, but I will reflect on the past day's discussion in terms of involvement of women when it comes to food production in the rural areas, and I thought today we were going to focus on land use, and I missed the most part of the presentation itself. My thinking is that the issue of production, food production, or should we say food security, in the rural areas is not a one-dimensional kind of issue. In the past, when I say the past, let's say years before apartheid and apartheid years, food security was achieved through subsistence farming. And subsistence farming did not have any form of government intervention. It was a culture in the rural areas, and it was implemented in a much coordinated way. I'm not speaking from a research perspective, but I'm just speaking from experience in terms of growing up in the rural areas. And what concerns me these days is that we've even lost subsistence farming within the rural areas. Land is lying there, it's not being utilized. And during the days of apartheid, you had a lot of men working in the mines and therefore working in the cities. And women were left at home, and it was actually the women who, with their children, worked on land. And men would be involved from time to time. And therefore, there was a very strong participation and involvement So one family maybe would have so many hectares, and those hectares of land would belong to that family. And what would happen, there was a leasing of land. And I remember in one instance where my family would lease land from people who did not want to use that land. And in return, they would give a number of bags of maize to those families. And what I would like to propose going forward, in fact, it's a discussion I've had yesterday with the two presenters, is that this matter is not a one-dimensional matter that we can look at it and say it's a matter of just food production and all that. It's a matter that is social as well, because you have now all the children. It's quiet there. There are no children. There are no strong women. In the past, we had younger women who were strong enough to be able to work on land. You have no young men. Our children have moved actually to the urban areas. Then it means we have to revisit maybe and review our approach in terms of how do we ensure that we go back there. And we cannot only be looking at subsistence farming, although we would need that as well. But we should be looking at improving in terms of production. How can people use that land, and how can government and NGOs, like the NGO that you made reference to as Talusa, how can they work together with those communities to ensure that, yes, we can use that land as subsistence, for subsistence farming, just to ensure that we have food security within that, but how do we ensure that how can we pull together the farmers that have been successful in working on that land and the communities that are there, where there are no children, where there are no men anymore, where there are no young women in the rural areas, where we have old women left who are looking after the very small children, that move to the urban areas. Because now, even the matter of education is a problem there, because the schools have no numbers and the schools are being closed. So it's not a one-dimensional matter that we can say we're looking at that, because if you look at it that way, you have to address a number of issues, because it means you have to ensure that you keep kind of strong physical people who will be able to work on that land. So you would have to look at educational issues, you have to look at social issues. Currently, we have a number of children, or let me say young men, that are being sent back to the rural areas now because maybe they are on deck and drugs, they are being removed from drugs, or maybe they've joined gangs because they're not working, there are no jobs. So it's a and those kids, they go back to those areas and they cause problems. So how do we engage them in a positive way by reviewing the approaches that we've used in the past? Because the approaches we've used in the past, we cannot employ the same approaches today. So there's a dynamic that we should look at in terms of how do we review this, and how do we revisit and come up with approaches that are multidimensional, that will work. How do we involve all those that are involved without reliance on government? How do we use NGOs where you have former university students and children who've grown out of those areas, giving back within those areas in terms of their expertise, in terms of research, because there isn't enough research that has been done in terms of what are the main causes on why people are not utilizing land. Because I can tell you there is none. But land is lying there, trees and homes. It's going to be a lot of work trying to use that. But how do we ensure that we do that? Because if we don't do that, then we'll keep having everyone migrating to the cities without any solution.
Yeah, I agree with you that the issue of land use in rural areas is an issue that has to be looked from various angles. I agree that one of the issues that has to be looked at is the contribution of the education system in what is happening in rural areas. Right now, the education system encourages the movement of people to urban areas and less on what people can do with their education in rural areas. So that's one thing. But the other thing that I just want to comment on in what you are saying is that the issue of unused land in rural areas is an issue that needs serious study, because it could easily fall into this view that rural people are not interested in land. And yet, in some instances, some rural people would be interested in land, but there are factors that discourage them from using the land. For instance, with population growth on this 13% of land, there has been a situation where grazing land has been demarcated for housing and livestock being allowed to get into the fields. So you have a situation where what was grazing land in the past has become residential land, used as residential land, and the grazing, and the fields have become grazing land. Because also that there has been, government has not been supporting, providing services. Fencing is one of the problems that affects production in rural areas. Without fencing, produce of people gets damaged by livestock that loiters around. So there is a need for research to understand exactly what are the factors that cause people to not to use land, if they are not using, because we may be looking at land that was used for crop production and see it as lying fallow, when in fact its use has changed. It's being used as grazing land now. Okay, there's a hand there.
I think this young lady has summarized the situation absolutely beautifully. I think that it's frightening what we're hearing from her. I think when we looked at your figures on there's nearly 8,000 people there, headmen, chiefs and all the rest of it. Now, that probably boils down to maybe, 5,000 communities throughout this country, 5,000 communities that have got to be instructed on how to get back to the land, how to use the land, how to market their products. Where is the government in this situation? Because it's such an important one. We've got to get back, people got to get back to the land instead of in these tin houses with no jobs and drugs and those other things that we're hearing about. Where is the government at this stage? How much progress has been made? We talk about the land taking over land with or without compensation. Doesn't matter what is going to happen with that land. How is it going to be distributed? How are the people going to be instructed? Where does the government stand at this time on this incredible problem that is being faced now?
I can just make a point. I agree with the young lady, I agree with the gentleman here, but the fact, in my view, this has got to be treated holistically. All the emphasis is on rural land. There's not a country in the world, I would suggest today, that is seeing people move from the cities to the rural areas. Not a country in the world. It is happening in exactly the opposite direction. So, while we talk glibly about rural land and rural land and rural land, the fact of the matter is that thousands and thousands of people coming into the city looking for jobs with no thought being given to what land they need. So I think this thing has got to be looked at holistically. You can't, people don't want to. They don't want to farm. You can ask white farmers, is your son on the farm? No, he's a lawyer. No, he's a banker.
Yeah. Okay.
From what I heard,
from what I heard, one actually needs a multi-dimensional package deal to make agriculture more attractive. And the use of the land that can be a source of, that will ensure food security, but also a source of income. And you sketched a case study in which an NGO's intervention ensured the success. And I think what is missing in all of this, and in the restitution, redistribution, whatever way in which there is reallocation of land, we need to talk about the presence and active involvement of extension workers, of capital, because people need capital, they need seeds, they need equipment. And then there has to be the dimension of marketing. And then it's the entrepreneurial side of it. Because farming has become a scientific undertaking in the present context, if it's going to be economically viable. And we need that kind of multidimensional package deal associated with the redistribution of land ownership in the country. And as you mentioned, a mentor coming in, but not taking care of the social relations, is so disruptive. If you only, again, it has to be multidimensional. And the question is whether we will see that kind of investment being made to ensure that the redistribution becomes successful in the sense of food security being ensured and economic viability that is associated with it. And it just sounds from what you said, if that is not incorporated, we can continue to have the redistribution, there can even be restitution without the success that we are anticipating should flow from.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, that's why I was saying that the issue of land use and production in rural areas has to be looked at broadly, because the issue of skills comes in, the issue of support services comes in the form of funds, capital, technical support also becomes critical. But those have to work hand in hand with the need to deal with social relations in those areas. I also wanted just to comment on the comment that was made about people moving to urban areas. That's true, but we should not make a mistake of seeing that movement as a permanent movement. People move to urban areas, they also move back to rural areas. In the study that I conducted in the Lupapasi area, you found a situation where young people moving to urban areas to work, but in their middle ages they come back, and as they were working they started investing in agricultural resources, building their resources, buying livestock, equipment and other things. So this says that not all the people that go to urban areas would settle in urban areas permanently. They go there and come back to invest and also to make use of the land. Okay.
Could you just explain to us how did it happen in the project that you were telling us about, that a mentor came in?
Well, as I say, at a particular point, the government got involved in the project. And as they got involved, they introduced ideas about the need for the project to produce for export markets. It's one of the ideas that was introduced. And for that to happen, you needed an expertise that comes from outside. And in most cases, that expertise is white commercial farmers that would be hired, contracted to be mentors of the land reform projects. It has some problems in a number of cases because you'd find that what they are introducing is not in line with what the people wanted to do and their level of skills. We can't hear.
I'm not sure if you heard the response to your comment about people not wanting to stay and farm, but there was quite a strong retort that that's not the case. And I just think if we think about it bluntly, if somebody had an option of living in a shack of 8 square meters versus being able to feed themselves and their family off a much larger piece of land, what does it come down to? You're not coming to the city just for jobs. You're coming because there's no education structure where you are in the rural areas. There's no way for your child to be educated. There's no hospital. There's no way for you to get treated if you have any kind of illness or disease. And the reality is people come to towns to get jobs, sure, but the jobs also fund education and health. So if we had proper infrastructure or at least decentralized structures in rural areas where there was better healthcare and better education, even on a small scale, so farm schools, farm clinics, etc., you would have people staying and going to farm because I can tell you now living in a shack is not a better alternative.
No, I'm not saying for a minute it is. But statistically around the world, urban areas, that's a fact. Now, I'm not going to change that fact, but I don't think it's such a thing around there. It's my view. If you can provide those facilities in the rural areas to keep people on the land, that is an ideal situation.
I mean, it's my personal big dream to have my own subsistence farm. Not have to deal with walls and traffic and ideal.
Yeah. And in addition to what people are suggesting about all the things in terms of infrastructure that is needed in the rural areas, I think it would make a lot of sense to see that if you look at, the case study we've just been given now, what would happen if those people got a settled purpose were to be given a bigger farm from the towns of Dordrecht and Leeuwarden, and you replicate that example all along the chain. You provide them with assistance. There would be an obvious reason for the improvement of the infrastructure we're talking about. For the moment, we're busy confining ourselves to the villages that we know of, where we come from. But we're not thinking about the farms we normally see as we drive along those and maybe this debate about land being taken over probably will assist in addressing that. There is land there, commercial, viable land, but it's not in the hands of the people we're talking about.
Okay.
I think the last point now is a critical issue. We seem not to be thinking about these rural areas of the former Pakistan in the way colonialists and other people were doing. That in a small piece of land can make people better to life. The real issue, as I see things, is a big land progress where the bulk of the land, of the productive land, remains in the hands of a tiny sort of group of people. And the majority of people case study, if we have time not to present it properly, what this case study is telling us is that if you give people more land, then there are more possibilities. The farm that is talking about is not a farm that was sort of created in the former bantustans. It's a farm that was run by one family, one white family. But when it was released to a group of 40 people, it made a huge difference in the lives. So, I'm nervous that we are losing sight of the fact that we have a land question in South Africa. And this is precisely what tomorrow is going to be about. When we're talking about land growth and how to get land back to the people. And maybe some possibilities.